So welcome to the Institute for Disability Research, Policy and Practice, Early Intervention, ECHO. We're glad that you're here today. If you'll take a minute and put your name and contact information into chat. We are recording today's session. We record that for educational and quality improvement. By joining today's session, you're consenting to being recorded. Please don't hit that leave button, but if you don't want to be recorded, I guess disconnect from the session. We have key components of an ECHO session. We have a subject matter expert. Today you get to hear me talking a lot because I am the presenter today, as well as I'm reviewing the case from last month before we go into our small breakout rooms. And then our last component of an ECHO session is that professional networking. So getting to know everybody that does some of the same work that we're all doing. So if you feel comfortable, turn on your cameras, be interactive and participate in that. That's really how we build that networking and community of practice. We love having interactions in chat or raising your hand or coming off mute, and we will get those answered and asked. Kurt Phillips is one of our hub members that monitors that for us. So if there's any questions or comments, he'll be sure to interrupt me and ask those questions. Again, just some session etiquette. Please keep your questions brief and on topic. Introduce yourself. Encourage you to turn on your camera if possible. It's always helpful when we can see squares of faces instead of a black screen when we're doing presentations. If we were in person, we'd all be smiling at each other and doing a lot of chit-chatting. So how to recreate that over this virtual world. We also talk about sensitive topics and some of the families and clients that we work with. So please remember to protect individual privacy, avoid using those first, middle, last names, mother's maiden names, any of those things. De-identify those situations. If you're unsure of that, reach out to a hub member. They all have an asterisk in front of their name so that they are easier to find in chat. Today, because I am doing a lot of the presenting, I will not have my chat up. I know sometimes people reach out to me with questions. If you have any questions or things about today's session, please reach out to Tori Coons or Leo Vasquez, and they will help you throughout today's session. In order to get a credit of attendance, we do ask that you complete our survey. That survey gives us information that we use to improve these ECHO sessions, as well as share the work that we're doing with our funding agencies in order to keep these sessions free. So thank you to everybody who completes those. And just another shout out to do it. On our survey, we do have an option to fill out your address. That is so that we can send you little thank you swags, because it does take a minute to fill out surveys, and we want you to know that we take that information and discuss it as a hub team, and like I said, also share it with our funding agencies. Oh, I hear someone off mute. Am I missing somebody, Tori or Leo? Okay.
You're good now. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Canvas is where we store everything. That's where we store all of the case recommendations, PowerPoints, information that is shared by presenters, our video recordings. So if you would like access to our Canvas page, please email earlyecho@usu.edu and we will get you access to that. Oh, I moved something and now my clicker is not working. Just a plug for case studies. Case studies are really a great way to learn from each other, to share situations that we're dealing with and get great ideas. So if you're considering or interested in submitting a case, please reach out to us and we will get you set up on that schedule. If you're nervous about presenting your case, reach out to me. I'll be glad to find a time to meet to hear about your case and present it for you. Just another way to try to learn from each other and get your case presented. We also have social media. So if you want to take a minute to follow us on social media, we share information that is shared with us, things about our sessions, as well as any of the other ECHO networks that are happening here at the Institute. So today I'm really excited to talk about the power of play. As I've just been sharing in ECHO sessions, we really bring our real work and real questions and real children and families into our space. Today, what I'm hoping that we do is ground this conversation in something that I really hope that we all do every day, and that is play. And not just playing with children, but playing for our own benefit. Play is what brings us joy and motivates us in situations. This isn't about adding something new to our plate. It's really hopefully helping us feel more confident naming and protecting using play as that foundation of learning, regulation, assessment, and inclusion. We're all probably been in home visits and we know that play happens on those floors, in the kitchen, during daily routines. I was at a visit just the other day when a child with a family, and the child was starting to play with cars and he pushed the cars underneath the couch. That turned into a really nice interaction of practicing turn taking. It wasn't something that was planned, it just was learning that happened naturally. So we know that in a home visit, play can look like a toddler banging a spoon on a during snack time, or crawling away and coming back, a child rolling toys under furniture. All of that is learning. And in EI, or early intervention, play is often the only time that the child has full control. And those things really matter for learning and regulation. We know, as I've just mentioned, that play for young children and for all of us really is how our brains develop, how they practice regulation, and how they make sense of relationships. Play builds across all developmental domains at the same time. When a toddler or a child is dumping snacks from a cup over and over again, as a parent, that might drive me bonkers. But as a provider, I'm seeing problem solving, motor planning, and persistence. From a coaching perspective, it really gives me that opportunity and some authentic information about routines that the families already care about. So I can coach by telling the family what I am seeing. And I can ask them questions of like, what does your child like to do again and again and again? And help families not be so worried. So when mom gets frustrated because the child is dumping snacks over and over, I can say, gosh, that looks like learning. Your child's trying to explain and test what happens next. That's their brain practicing. This play tells us about how they're regulating with things. So before we move on, I would love to see, I'm going to open my chat here. What kind of play do you guys enjoy most, either as an adult or with the kids that you serve? If you want to drop it in chat. Playing the piano, pretend play, puzzles, gardening, art and sensory, bubbles, rusty joints. What was that one? The rusty joints? Water class, my rusty joints, water class. Oh, okay, I like that one. My hobby is theater, so getting into acting and singing and dancing with a group of people. Yeah, all of those things are what bring us joy, right? For me, I love anything social or outdoors, like hiking and running. That's what brings me joy. And I notice that when I'm working with families, those are also my kind of some of my go-to activities with them. They're always about people games. Um, Playing with toys isn't always my favorite one. So that is not something that I tend to do in my visits. Pretend play is not one that I always go to. So as you're thinking about what type of play that you enjoy doing, think about it also in terms of home visits. How does that look? And what happens when you don't get to do some of your play? I know for me, I start getting really crabby and like I really need to be outside. So today's weather is not something I enjoy because it's raining where I'm at. And that makes me know that I can't go on my hike after work. I'm going to have to go to the gym. So it's not always joyful. Another piece that I want to ground in our conversation today is the four domains. And these are the four domains. I know we look at a lot of other ones in our work that we do, but these are the ones that are emphasized in Learn the Signs, Act Early. And that is cognitive, social, movement, and communication. And the reason why these are important is that you can't build communication without social engagement. Pretend play requires cognitive skills, and movement really supports everything that we do. So when we're looking at play, we're seeing all these domains at once. You guys mentioned bubbles and container play. So when we see those happening in a home visit, we might be noticing communication, social connection, movement, and problem solving all at one time. When we're looking at a diaper change, an infant kicking that, we're noticing that movement and regulation. And from that coaching lens, that helps us and lets us say to families, I'm noticing that that communication, movement, and problem solving are all happening together instead of isolating those skills. We get to see the whole child. So again, in chat, is there a specific domain that you tend to notice first during visits? For me, I tend to look at that social aspect of, is that child engaged with their family? So somebody else said social, depends on the age, but regulation, social and communication. Fine motor and sensory processing. Yeah. And I would say that while we're looking at some of those things, we might notice those domains first, but we're probably noticing all the other domains. And that's where play really matters, is because development happens across domains. And observing children in play routines gives us a lot more accurate information than just the task itself. Play shows us how a child might be regulating. A structured activity shows us what a child can do once, where play really tells us how they choose to do that over and over again. That's where that learning sticks. So it's where we're seeing that movement and communication and social behavior and play tells us. It really gives us that whole picture of the child versus, like I said, just those isolated incidences. And we know that play develops over time. It starts with some sensory motor, moves to symbolic to social. But that play doesn't get replaced as the child grows, it accumulates or layers. So earlier forms of play remain active. An infant exploring their feet, so bringing their feet to their mouth, rubbing them together, or watching them is sensory motor play. Then they're starting to integrate body awareness, movement, and attention while learning. So they might be thinking to themselves, like, this body is mine. And if I move it, it moves with me. Or when a toddler is carrying objects everywhere, they're filling their pockets full of rocks or clutching those toys. It really is starting to blend that sensory motor and symbolic play. They're grounding themselves through weight and touch, all while assigning meaning or comfort to those items. They might be saying, this toy animal that I have, when I go into a new situation, it's helping me. It's my comfort item, that regulation with it. A 3-year-old playing with toys might start lining them up, even though they have some advanced language and imagination, is really using some of that sensory motor play for regulation. That alignment and repetition helps them organize their nervous system and emerge into some symbolic things like all the red cars go over here and they're going to go to the grocery store. Um, and our role is to normalize those developmental differences and build where the child is rather than pushing them to look older or more academic. So it's a really powerful time to reframe that for families. Talking with families that this isn't immature that we're working on regulation from a sensory motor point. It's that foundational or that regulation really comes before that complexity. So as we walk through some of the several types of play, they're not really necessarily categories that the children fit into, but they're tools we can use to notice learning. Um, The first one is object play, and it's really building some of those early and problem-solving skills. It gives us a natural window into how children learn, regulate, and communicate. Um, it might look like a caregiver saying, she keeps throwing the food on the floor. I think she's doing this on purpose. How many of you guys have heard a scenario like that? I know I have. And some of the things that we can reframe that into is that saying, honoring that. Yeah, she is doing that on purpose, but it's for learning, not necessarily mischief. She's might be experimenting with that gravity, sound, and your reaction. And we can coach it or by modeling. I'd narrate those things. Uh-oh, it fell, or you dropped it. And then I'd wait. Let's see what she's going to do next. Is she going to communicate with us? Is she going to try it again? How do we reframe those things within everyday situations? Social play in EI often looks like those shared routines, not necessarily group play. And our role as a coach or a provider is to really help caregivers slow down, notice those cues, and label emotions instead of managing behavior. So, situation that I hear a lot of times from the families that I work with is that he runs away. So, I don't think he wants to play with me. He's not really sitting still or staying engaged. And ways that I can reframe that is that maybe this is connection seeking. Is he checking back in with us? Does he look at you to say, will you follow me? Are you going to chase me? So I can coach those families to stay emotionally connected and saying things like, oh, see you later, bye. And then when he comes back, you came back. It becomes this back and forth social learning. Or playing peekaboo over and over, or other repeated songs. So a caregiver might get worried that they're singing those same songs over again. And I can reframe that by saying that repetition really tells us that she's feeling safe and regulated. She's practicing, anticipating, taking turns, and having some shared enjoyment back and forth with you. We can coach those things by slowing it down, pausing before the fun part, and then invite that communication without words. Anybody have a good social routine game that they frequently use that they would want to share with us? And if not, that's okay too.
I use a real simple one called bore a hole. I learned it from my mother-in-law, and you just take your finger out and you go bore a hole right in there. And then you say right in your tummy or right in your leg. And it's just anticipation.
That is a good one. I love that one.
Yeah, it's Pat here. I don't know if Ellie's on, but I've done a lot of consults with her, and she always sings goodbye to the kids. And the anticipatory piece of that, I always go, that's kind of cute, but actually, the anticipatory part of it is part of her session, and I think it's really successful. She always sings goodbye.
Yeah, those are, yeah, real routines that we do. We're practicing, and again, not just that anticipation that we're building, but we're also building those social cues. When somebody leaves, we need to say goodbye to them. What's a way to do that? So it really is a great way to practice multiple domains. And so I love some of these things that are coming in the chat. And again, some ways that we learn from each other, right? Like that boring in the hole, or Kate's example of up, 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 and bouncing really exaggerated with any toy. Yeah, great idea. Okay, so we're gonna watch this video, and the video is in Spanish, so a lot of us may not no, but I want you guys to notice things that the adult is doing in this video.
Ahí está. Oh, oh. Bravo, aquí está. La cabeza. ¿Cómo se siente la cabeza? Oh, no. Boo. Oh, no. No estás seguro de eso. No estás seguro de eso. Oh, cabeza, cabeza, cabeza. Oh, oh. ¡Yeah! ¡Bravo! ¿Más? Cabeza, cabeza, cabeza. Oh, ¿dónde estás? Oh, aquí está.
Hey, so what were some of the domains that you noticed during this social play? Did anybody notice the communication? Modeling the word, petition, the clapping, him doing some problem solving, so some of that cognitive, social communication, cognition, yeah. All of us probably understood what was happening and what the mom was saying, even if we don't speak that language. What did you guys notice that was really nice about the timing of the adult's response? The change in pitch and tone with language, yeah.
Well, I'm just going to talk. I can't type.
You're good.
Well, she clearly wanted him to attend to the toy, and he took off the scarf, and then she tapped on the toy, but he was not interested, and so she went directly to him. So she was very tuned in to where he was at that level.
Yeah, yeah, she really was. And she didn't quiz. They didn't rush it, right? It was really following his lead, taking small stretches of time with patience along with repetition. Yeah, all of those things are really what was so nice in this video. Okay, let me see if I can get back to my slides. All right. So the next type of play is really about pretend play. And this helps children process their world. A child feeding a pet, pushing an empty stroller, or using a block as a phone is all practicing those routines, language, and perspective taking. It doesn't have to be elaborate to be meaningful. And our role as the provider or even a caregiver is not to direct the play, but expand on it. So if a child is pushing the car, we can say, "Go, car." A child uses the block as a phone. "Hello." Now we're pretending to talk to dad on the telephone. Or the child feeding the dog. And so, ooh, the dog's hungry, eat, yum, yum, yum. All of those things help really build that emotional process and flexible thinking within pretend play. So it's a great way to support that language and perspective taking. Again, we're going to watch this next video, and again, notice what developmental domains are happening within this play sequence, as well as what the caregiver or adult does.
You.
Oh,
Smile, spread it. Where's your smile, Sasha?
Two washcloths.
Started to
Scrub, 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 scrub. Scrub, 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 scrub. Wash his back.
the boy went.
Pizza.
Giant kept dancing.
Dry. Yeah, drying. Dry his head. Dry his belly.
Hey buddy, I'm gonna wipe your nose.
Out of breath. Remember we tapped on the
Hi.
fell out flat on the ground. Splash. Upset the father.
Dry his back. Dry his toes. Toes.
You want to build something in front? People looked out there and were he's gone.
Dry his legs.
Abby disappeared. Acting on Sasha's head. The people ran.
Toes. Mommy.
Oh my goodness, look at his face back and forth.
Oh, big hug. Big hug. Bye bye, baby. More babies.
He's trying to clean up the kids.
Oh, you want to put them to bed?
2, 3, 4.
Sorry, every time I went to go see your guys' comments, it messes it up. But so what are some of the things that you guys noticed in there? I know you guys have put some things in chat. So parallel play, modeling, following the child's lead. I like how she moved the stuff out of the way. He would, when he was into something else, to give him more room to play and explore. Practicing life skills, matching his pace, commenting. She is expanding, yeah. What did you notice about the child? What were some of the things he was also doing? One of the things I really liked and noticed is that he has that necklace around his to help with some of the regulation. And then he's attempting to do some of that commenting and play. Anything else that you guys noticed in that video? He became more verbal as the interaction went on. Yeah. All great things. And I think that's the power of play, right? That we get a lot more to happen, and things occur when play happens. We all have more joy when we're doing things that we find fun. And yeah, Shelby, he stayed on task even with the distraction of his nose getting wiped. Yeah. Okay. So the next type of play that children or even us as adults like to do is this rough and tumble play. And the rough and tumble play really are great for those children who seek movement, but it also helps build up body awareness. We can learn those boundaries. And again, as a provider, our role isn't to stop this play. It's really to help differentiate between safe play and unsafe behaviors. So we can coach caregivers to set really clear expectations and then provide those alternatives. So like a cushion or a mat, and we can use language that matters. So we want to guide this instead of stopping it. Let's give him what his body is asking for safely. This actually just happened in my visit this morning, and it was a light bulb moment for Mom. She started saying things like, I noticed that when I give him an alternative to what he's already doing, I can expand learning times instead of fighting him. And she's like, I think you've been telling me this for a while, Janelle, but it finally clicked right in this activity because this kiddo wanted to, I think he wanted to jump off the couch, and Mom was not okay with that. So we turned it into, can we jump from a block to a block? And we didn't jump on the blocks, but we were jumping block to block. And that really helped Mom really see how this rough and tumble play can help them navigate their world, build that body awareness, and learn those boundaries. In this next video, they're going to talk about a research study that was done and some of the benefits of rough and tumble play.
She observed 85 fathers and their children, aged 2 to 6, playing. And then they followed up 5 years later to measure the children's behavior. When the father and son had a good relationship during the play, and the parent was the dominant one and able to push the brakes at the right time, before like someone gets slapped or someone's getting hurt, those kids were seen to be more pro-social and have better emotional control in their school years. However, the families whereby the father let the child completely dominate the play, the kids were shown 5 years later to be more aggressive and have less emotional control than their peers. Letting our children completely dominate this type of play can send them the message that aggression is an effective way to control others. So this tells us that boundaries and a parent that can analyze and put the brakes on at the right time is critical for rough and tumble play in order to reap all of its benefits. Furthermore, roughhousing doesn't necessarily have to include fighting. While power play, or letting your kiddo feel like the winner or the boss or the man in charge, is an amazing thing for toddlers, let's face it, they're kind of disempowered people. It may not always feel like it, but toddlers hear the word no a lot. So creating a play environment that gives them a measure or a sense of power is a really good thing to alleviate those effects and also build their self-confidence. But honestly, we use this kind of dynamic in many different types of play. Think about when you play doctor-patient with your toddler, or if you're playing teacher-student. So if you're not comfortable with fighting, no problem. Roughhousing doesn't necessarily have to go hand in hand with power play or fighting. In fact, in the next video, I'm going to be breaking down 5 rough and tumble games that don't involve fighting at all. Okay, so
I agree with that. Really, this type of play doesn't always have to be about chaos. And I loved that when we as adults help the children learn those boundaries, it's actually helping them in that long run, of that aggression isn't the way to get interactions to happen. We have to start teaching how hard is too hard. It gives us another learning opportunity. We also can provide in this rough and tumble play, like how to start and how to stop a game. It is also teaching them how to read another person's cues. So do you see when sister doesn't like when you go and tackle her? See how her facial expression is? Those are all of those things that we can teach within this type of play, that rough and tumble.
the way
And then the next one is also about movement. So we all know that movement is learning. When we're moving, more communication is happening. When we're moving, a lot of things come together. But a caregiver might start getting worried. So he's wild. He never stops moving. I'm worried he can't control his body. And a way that we can reframe that and provide a coaching opportunity is really talking about how movement organizes his nervous system. Play is his regulation. So he wants those big movements. Let's provide those safe options for him especially before expecting him to sit down. Storytelling and creative play is most important for children and toddlers to learn to communicate. But it's really not necessarily about producing something perfect. It's about that exploring. It can help them navigate things as well as become flexible and creative within that. So we can add meaning to the things that they're doing, like a child scribbling. We can coach to say, ooh, color fast, or you're making lines. If a child is humming, we can hum back and turn it into a song. Again, creating some of that back and forth play that becomes how that early storytelling begins, and with shared attention and rhythm. meeting children where they are developmentally is one of the most supportive things we can do. The one thing to always remember is that progress isn't just learning new skills, it's longer engagement. We can say things to families like, he stayed with you longer today. Improved regulation. Look at that. She recovered so much faster after getting upset. It includes increased participation. And when we can name this growth out loud to families, it helps them see those things in their everyday routines and situations that they then realize that they are getting more interactions out of their child. When we talk about play, we know that it looks different at every stage, whether it's infancy, toddlers, or preschool. So infants might always look at sensory and regulation. It might look like exploring objects with their hands or mouth. Also watching those caregivers' faces, those moments of shared meaning and engagement. And that is really laying that foundation for communication, regulation, and connection, even when it doesn't look like play. As children move to toddlerhood, it might start looking more functional and gradually more pretend play. They practice those real life routines, encouraging feeding a doll or carrying objects from room to room. And then as they get into preschool, it can start having simple rules and roles. The children might get to negotiate with their peer who gets to be drive the fire truck or who doesn't. As kids grow, the play adds layers, but it doesn't mean that some of those earlier play disappears. It's just building on it. We all still work on ways to regulate ourselves. We all still work on ways to improve our communication and connection with others. And that's where that goal is really to not push that play to look more academic, but to help us meet those children where they are developmentally and build from there. There are some strategies that work at any age, and I'm sure all of you guys know these really well and utilize them in all of your visits. But the first one is just following that child's lead. So paying attention to what the child is interested in and joining them without trying to control or redirect. This idea really helps build that trust and attention with caregivers and child, as well as it gives us an opportunity to observe and participate by copying their sounds and actions, which helps with communication later on. Those inviting environments. Somebody mentioned, like in that video where she removed some of the distractions. That's a great way to include those inviting environments. It helps us arrange success for the child. We might also have to practice sitting face to face and getting down on the floor. I love how this grandpa is underneath the kitchen table with the child. And so creating that space for support and connection. Using interactive techniques. So making sure that we use simple language or gestures, match those child's pace, respond to all of those communication attempts, whether they're sounds, looks, movements, or gestures. And again, this creates that coaching opportunity that we can have with families. By making sure that they are aware that those small intentional moments throughout the day are really impactful on development. It doesn't have to be a specific teaching session where we are working on, fine motor or a specific skill, but those can happen throughout the day. And the play strategies work really well because they're rooted in relationships. We love to have those interactions with each other. We're all social creatures. And so by playing with each other, we are more engaged and practicing different domains. Play really supports that brain development, regulation, language, and inclusion. Play is not the reward, it's really that access point, and it's that foundation to everyday learning. It helps increase that flexibility and confidence, and we need to always encourage that curiosity. So I would love for you to take a moment and reflect on the type of play that energizes you, which ones you support most often, and which ones you might intentionally elevate in your everyday situation. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm naturally energized by social play, things like turn taking, silly songs. And I notice that I spend a lot of my time coaching that regulation through movement. As I thought about the play that I want to intentionally elevate is really that pretend play, even when it feels early or minimal. If anybody wants to come off mute or put in chat some of the reflections that they've thought of. Okay. Okay. Pretend play, sound effects, and narration of the child's play. Great. Again, I just encourage you to think about it. It was really helpful for me to know what kind of play I want to elevate in my visits. I'm going to open it up for any questions or comments. And Tori, and Leo, I can't see anybody yet, so.
Janelle, we have a
There,
question in the chat. Oh, sorry, Leo. Do you want to? Okay. The question comes from Marlon F. Do you have a specific strategy? Sorry, my thing scrolled up. Do you have a specific strategy you fall back on if children are hard to engage?
So my specific strategy that I fall back on is always going back to those social play and following the child's lead. I might ask the parent what are some of those things that they enjoy doing with their child, and how can we turn that into a start, middle, and end game. And I would
We
agree
have.
with you, Pat, that play is the child's work. Sorry, Tori.
No, I didn't know that you could see the chat. So if you can see the chat, then.
Okay. If there's no more questions, I'm going to move on. I hope that there were some people that were on our call from last month's session when we didn't get to our case. So I'm going to just give a brief recap of the case from last month, and then we'll go into our breakout sessions so we can have some time to discuss that. So this child is currently 26 months old. He has right quadriplegic cerebral palsy. He was premature at 22 weeks. He had some substance prenatal exposure and a brain injury. He did spend 202 days in the NICU. And there was severe dysphagia and silent aspiration. Currently, he's medically stable, but remains on a G-tube with a diagnosis of CP, BPD, microcephaly, dysphagia. He receives OT, PT, SLP, and monthly outpatient feeding therapy. He has made some progress with reduced gagging and vomiting. He's increasing tolerance of textures. He's starting to having some consistent swallowing of dry cereal and yogurt. He does have enjoyed the thickened liquids via straws. He has the emergence of independent walking. The communication is delayed with limited intentional vocalization. So her main questions are some of those next steps. So what are some ideas for meal times that can be fun for the whole family and help with oral motor skills for chewing and swallowing? What are some sensory activities to help with increased enjoyment around meal times? Ideas for ways to progress oral motor and for feeding and speech. And then knowing that acquiring gestures has been slow, what are some ideas to increase these skills? Perhaps in some simple activities that can be incorporated into routines easily. So I believe that each hub member has been assigned their group. And Tori, you can go ahead and put us into the breakout rooms. Your group, take it away.
Yeah, sorry, when I jumped out of the breakout room, I jumped off the whole thing. So when I came back, I thought, okay, Kurt came off mute. I thought I was supposed to give the report.
No, we thought you heard our question about April Fools.
No, we had a lot of really good questions. There was a couple around that first question, making the meal times fun. And we talked about kind of that messy play with putting on the tray and just playing with it and bring it to the mouth. And my question to the group was, what about trying to get the moms to be able to do that without like, okay, this is going to mess up my whole house. We had some really good ideas, doing it outside, doing it without a lot of clothes on, so you don't have to wash clothes, putting a tarp down that you can just wipe up. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Emily mentioned, a messy dinner. Just have a plastic tablecloth and just dump all the spaghetti on the table with no plates or forks or anything and have everybody just kind of eat. And so there's a lot of really good thoughts on how to do that one. On the third one about progressing oral motor development for feeding and speech, we talked a lot about eye-to-eye contact, being straight across from the child, having the child look in the mirror as they do the sounds or as they eat or whatever the case is. So a lot of really good things. We had a question about use of technology because there's a lot of fun filters that kids can use now where the filter will turn them into a dog. So they're eating, and as they're eating, it looks like they're a dog eating, or they're talking and it looks like they're a dog talking. And so one of the questions was, how much technology is too much and should we use it or not? I think that we came to at least I came in my mind to the answer that as long as we use it as a tool and not as a babysitter or something, that the technology can really be helpful in helping make this play and this eating time or speech time fun.
Oh, those are good ideas. I love that. And again, reframing that, just kind of what I've been talking about, right? With parents, reframing how play is essential and food play is essential in learning and developing. Those are great ideas.
I've been trying to convince my wife it's okay for me to eat with my hands for a lot of years, but this finally does it. I'll take this and tell her experts from across the nation say we should be able to just eat with our hands.
Okay, good.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. All right. Heather Waters and Rebecca, I don't know which one took note.
Yeah, so this is Heather, and I took notes. And the question that we were given was question one. So, some fun ideas for meal times, making them fun for the whole family, and then also helping progress oral motor skills for chewing and swallowing. And so, we talked about, involving the child in meal prep up from deciding, maybe what food to going shopping and actually helping to prepare or watching in that preparation so that they're a part of all of it and have some control. We also talked about changing up the environment, making it fun. So maybe we're going to have a picnic. If the weather's nice, we're going to go outside. We're going to do something with that. We talked about themes. So, having breakfast foods for dinner, or something along those lines, or for St. Patrick's Day we're going to pick out some foods that are green, so we're going to have some green grapes, cut them in half, some green peas, something like that. We talked about pretend play, so feeding a doll or feeding a stuffed animal. We talked about introducing food in small steps. So, starting out with, food, letting them smell the food, look at the food. Maybe if it's crunchy, they can listen to someone else chewing and hear the food. Then we can bring it up and touch their lip. And then again, just kind of progressing to where they take a bite. We also talked about the division of responsibility and how also persistence is key. So when we're introducing new foods, we often give up early as caregivers, but we've got to keep introducing it. But again, apply that division of responsibility. They are responsible for how much they're going to eat and not putting pressure on them to eat. There's many others, but anyway, those are several that we talked about.
Those are great ideas. I love those ideas. Um, Kate and Shelby, which one of you took notes and want to share what your group talked about?
I took notes. We were kind of all over the place. We talked a lot about, we also brought up having a picnic. Talked about figuring out where the gagging is happening. Is it when the food is in his mouth? Is it when it's outside of his mouth, in his hands? And then once we figure that out, kind of working from there. Giving him some chewies, completing an oral motor exam if it hasn't already been completed, collaborating with the outpatient feeding therapist, and then positioning during feeding. What does that look like? Does he have enough support? And then asking the family what their priority is. Just because with G-tube feedings, it seems like a lot of times that's an area of stress where maybe we're more focused on walking right now. So if we've got that walking and don't have to worry about the nutrition aspect, so that was mostly what we talked about.
Yeah, that's a great point to remember, meeting parents where they're at too. Nice. Okay, Pat and Leo. I'm not sure. Leo, I'm going to guess Leo took note.
Yeah, I did take notes. I think something really important that Pat mentioned is just to kind of, even looking pre-gesture, is the kid, like, how is the kiddo communicating? Maybe through their body language, because body language could show signs of stress or anxiety, and maybe even looking at some of those pre-indicators that are pre-gesture rather than just looking at gesture and trying to almost rush the child onto these indicators that maybe they, aren't able to meet yet, but yeah, maybe we just need to go a little slower. And as you said, we even talked about it just to meet the family where they're at and to just meet the child where they're at. We obviously don't want to rush any of this process, and we want to make it comfortable for both the family and the child.
Great. Well, those are wonderful recommendations, and I'm glad that we were able to give the time to this case presentation instead of rushing it through last month. So I appreciate you guys all kind of being flexible with that as we move forward. We have our session next month, May 6th, where we will be hearing about typical behavior from Ashley Stewart. So I hope that you will all join us next month. And hopefully you don't have any April Fool's Day jokes happen in the next little while on you. So Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.